session of the product management series. So in the past 2 sessions, we talk about the role of a PM, and we talk about some, I think last time we'll talk about how we work with the different ideas, how do we think about what do the roadmap, and then how we identify the pain point. So, and we're going to have I think about 3 or 4 more sessions. And today we're going to talk about how to how to work with others and make things happen. And so today will be focused on many different my personal experience at Amazon, that something that some methods, tips that I think works well. And I know that I think there's different people have different perspective about different situations. And there are also some, that Amazon can be perceived as a place that has a high stress, etc. So today I'm going to share as a member of Amazon, how do I think that works for me from the product manager perspective. And I think the sharing that I have today can be applied to any other roles. And lastly, that at the end of the session, we're going to talk about kind of some, if you are, I think majority of the audience or the professionals in the IT company in Seattle area are data scientists, engineers, etc. So I will provide some tips that I think will help to better collaborate with your peers, with your PMs at your team or at your department. And the core, maybe it might be beneficial to share that I think the core purpose of the entire series is to kind of share how PM works, etc. At the same time, that the reason why that we're using English for the sharing is really to showcase that that all of us can be confident in the communication within those big companies, right? It doesn't matter that we have a strong or we have a weak accent. It doesn't really matter, as long as we are confident and we speak up, and we can be a very effective communicator at our team. So with that, I'm going to start today's sharing. I'm going to share my screen with some keynotes on the screen, and I will talk each of them through. And then I think what the process is going to be that I will talk about half hour, and then take a 5 minutes break and come back for half hour, and then we can leave about 15 to 20 minutes for questions. And also feel free to reach out to me offline if you have further questions. So let me share my screen very quick. All right, so this is basically the outline for today's communication. So you can see that the title, right? Humans are complicated and usually selfish, so how to make things happen? This might be a little bit provocative, right? To see, okay, to calling that humans are selfish. I think what I'm trying to illustrate that, right? I think we're all centered around the idea of make our lives better, and I think inherently that we're trying to have a easy life. We're trying to be lazy. We're trying to work as much as little as we can. So I think everybody share the same kind of a tendency to be lazy, and then to work less if they can. So I think maybe the title is a little bit too much, to kind of a little bit exaggerating. I think the core that I want to see that right, with the understanding that each of us are more likely, right, to help with their own interest, right? When particularly working with a large company, how we can make things happen. So from my personal experience, that I kind of list over 4 major categories. I think about communication, trust, working hard and be less selfish. Let's start with the first one, right? Effective communication. So um, the the first one I think really helps me personally is about the rule for answering question, particularly when answer a question right to leadership when with a group of members and other teams when you're trying to um, answer a question, right? I think the rule that I learned is actually from my manager when I joined Amazon. I didn't know this. I didn't know this one. So before I joined Amazon, I was with JP Morgan Chase. I have never heard of this lesson, but it really helped me, right? So basically what it says is that when we answer a question, right, there should be only three answers, right? If the question is asking for very specifically for something, right, there should be only three answers, right? It should be very concise and very straightforward. You either answer yes or no, or you say, I will circle back. Well, actually is right. It means that I don't know, and I will circle back with more data or a date. So when I say data, it means right, it's about a question. Okay, the performance, customer experience, etc. So you say, okay, I'll come back with more data. The data means right about a project. Okay, when you are going to launch. Okay, I don't know. I'm going to come back with a date. So this one, I think it is the reason it is so important or so effective is that right it basically allows for no ambiguity, right? When you provide an answer that you provide a sense of assurance that okay your answer makes sense, that the people can trust your answer because you say yes or no. There's no kind of in between. I think when we are at a group meeting, right, we're trying to the tendency that we're trying to be impressive. We're trying to impress other people, right, at a meeting. At the same time that we're trying to minimize the possibility that we will be looked as we don't know something, right? We don't want to appear that we don't know something, even though the fact is that we cannot know all the information, right? So this is hard because I think many times I don't know if I still see a lot of this happening, right? Sometimes and people will right when they do not know the answer, right, they were trying to kind of circumvent the topic. I think blah blah blah, and then using some irrelevant data to support something that they don't know, what they will not give a straight answer. I think that can be, for me at least, right, you kind of it's a waste of time, right? If when you do not answer the question, you take about 1 or 2 or 3 minutes of the time of the meeting time. At the same time, you're not really provide any value, right, to the meeting, to the group. Um, so when so when I learn this lesson, right, I usually I really kind of keep this in mind, right? When I must ask a question, I must say, okay, yes, I know. Okay, I know the answer. I don't know the answer. I come back, and gradually, right now, this kind of a mental model not only kind of works for me, well, I follow this principle, at the meetings. It also force me, right, when I'm not at the meetings or I'm doing something else, such I'm trying to, write an email, I'm prepared for something, where I'm thinking of a problem, I'm using the same operating model, right, or the mental model to say, okay, do I really know the answer, right? Yes or no, or I need more data. So really to provide clarity for myself when I in all kind of either kind of right. Yeah, if I'm thinking about a problem with myself, right, I use this model to stress test that if I know the answer, and then our meetings obviously that I will use this model to provide clarity for other people. And so this one I think is really powerful, and but it's not easy to do. It's not easy. I think it's not comfortable to follow this rule. Particularly, right, the third one that you say, I don't know. But I strongly recommend this rule in your day-to-day communication. And the more I think the more you use it, you will realize that um, I think when you, right, I think maybe we can think of in other people's shoes that if, right, if you are talking to somebody with this kind of style for the style for answering questions, I think you will feel very confident. You will feel very comfortable in their answers, right? You know that if you ask a question, you're going to get the information that you need, or you know that they'll come back with the information that you need. So think from that perspective and try to implement this one when you can. I think this can be really, really helpful. And gradually, then when we incorporate this kind of operating model into our day-to-day, I think can be super powerful. So this is the first rule that I recommend in terms of communication or answering a question. Now, the second one, right, make ask very specific through email. Well, I think actually, right, I think we can delete this one, not through email, but any other. I think the reason why I'm kind of say through email that I think my intent is to make sure that when we make an ask, right, a written form of ask is always more effective and powerful than the ask that we communicate through speaking or through meetings. So the making the ask very specific, I think is not only that, right, is to we that we I think two things. Sometimes I think sometimes that we don't know what we are looking for, particularly when we are in a panic mode. When let's say we are in a panic mode, that, right, let's say we have a very, very rush deadline that we need to do something, right? Say tomorrow, we need to launch something tomorrow, but maybe there's a 5 or 6 different moving parts that we're not sure about. So you kind of the mind is very messy. Kind of we are thinking about A, B, C, D, E, and then I think when we're in that panic mode, we tend to kind of jump around, and we're trying to just kind of desperate, and then we send an email to people. Oh, can you help me? Can you help me that? But when we're doing that, we don't really know, right, what our problem is. We don't know that how people can help us. So I think I think this one is really important. I think it helped me many times that right. I think it is not uncommon that we can be put into a situation that, right, the deadline is very close, or we think that something is almost impossible to accomplish. When we are in that panic mode, I think we just ask the question that if we are going to ask for help, we need to make the ask very specific. But I think we need to sit down first, think through, okay, what is the key problems, and then based on that, and then we can, within a week, email people to get what we need. I think so. That is what, from our perspective. On the other end, right? I think making the task specific is also to show respect for other people. So what I mean is that I'm not sure if you have, right, kind of be put into the situation that, right, sometimes we are added to some channel, we're added to some chat, we are copying some emails, but we really don't know that why we are, right, we're involved in that conversation. Now the problem comes when we don't know the clarity or the purpose of a channel, of an email chain. I think we get, sometimes we get some a little bit uneasy, right? Uneasy in terms of, okay, I'm in the email chain. So particularly, okay, I think what can be very frustrating for a lot of people is that if we were added to an email chain with a long history, we added there, but there's no, right, when we don't receive clear guidance on why we are added, it kind of you force people to read the entire history without a clear purpose now, right? If we don't read it, we will feel like we're going to miss something, or we're not helping. We're afraid that we can be appear that we're not cooperative. So it's really kind of respect others and make other people, right, job easier when you need some guidance from them. And this one, I think it is not that straightforward sometimes, particularly for a complex project. So we really need to kind of make the ask as specific as possible. So I don't know. I think over here I'm using a one example, right? Docker review. So I don't know about the other company's culture, but for Amazon, that right, the main mechanism for communication is through document, right? The document of a strategy, document of a new product idea, and the document for performance review. So when we add somebody, right, to a doc review, I think there's a two scenarios. Number one, that you want somebody um, to um, to read the whole thing and provide feedback. There's a scenario that you want specific feedback on specific areas. That's number one. Number two is that, right? What kind of feedback are you looking for, right? Are you looking for, are looking for approval? Are you looking for just additional guidance? You're looking for ideas. You're looking for correction, etc. Um, so for this one, right? For any document, I think in many different occasions that, particularly when we present something to leadership, um, the recommendation, right, is to really to make that document, what the purpose of the document, super clear at the beginning, that okay, the purpose of this review is to blah blah blah, right? It should be specific as, okay, the purpose of this review is to review blah 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 and get approval from blah 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 for the plan blah blah blah. And when we, because I think that purpose really kind of set a tone for the entire meetings, right? Without clear purpose or clear action that will require the audience to take, it really makes the meeting ineffective. So I think for this one, right, I think making tasks very specific. The task, right, can be, through when you're talking to somebody, you're requesting help, you're sending emails, trying to kind of stress test your ask is, are they really specific that make the job easier for other people? So trying to take out the guesswork for your audience. Number one is going to make the communication less effective, and number two, you're really, I think in that way, we're not respecting the time of other people. We're wasting the time for others. The third one, right, is another, I think, interesting, I would say, thought that I learned, right, from the process. It's about kind of when we describe something, right, kind of describe an action, a plan about what's going to happen, trying to use, right, kind of be, using the word or specify who is going to take the action, right? I think many times that we can see, the project update about some ideas that is going to, okay, the 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 report will be delivered by to somebody, blah 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 blah, but we don't really know, right, who's going to deliver the report. And then that kind of convey. I think the reason why, I think there are two reasons for people that why sometimes that there's no very specific people or action owner for something. The first scenario that is maybe we don't know, right? So sometimes we don't know that if when there's no clear owner for something, so we just, okay, put it very in general that, okay, something will be done, blah blah blah. But by doing so, right, we're really kind of that we promise something that we cannot promise, because really that we think that somebody will take it, but really we don't know even yet. And secondly, I think the most important is that I think sometimes we are not comfortable in using I or we, because I think sometimes we do not want to take responsibility, right, for certain action. So we're trying to, I think sometimes we intentionally not using I or we, intentionally to make it very vague about who is going to, about ownership for certain action, about something. So, but by doing so, when there's no clear ownership, it's really kind of for hard for people to believe that something that you're promising or something that you're going to, that's something that's going to happen, right? How do I know that something going to happen? We don't even know who is going to do it. And even better, right? If we're not going to use I or we, I think that's fine, because many times we're not doing it, right. But if the action is not going to be taken by you, right, then you need to specify, okay, which team is going to do it, right. That team has to be very specific, right. It's going to be a team, so we have that team, that it should be a very clear understanding that which team it is. And in terms of how clear it means, I think it should be as clear that when something happens, right, every audience in your channel should know who to reach out to understand the status of that specific action item. So I think that should be the golden rule, that when we communicate a plan or an action, when there's something wrong, or when anyone has some idea or some concern or would like to follow up, they should know who to follow up, right? Either follow up with you or follow up with the team or the person that we mentioned in the action. So I think this one is to help us to really to stress test that when we say anything, right, we want to be cautious that when we say anything, should be super clear. And I think to force us, right, before we say anything, before we communicate a plan, we have done all our, I think it forces us to, to that in terms of aligning or alignment with your team, right? Because I think when we mention the owner of any action, it means that we already clearly communicate or aligned resourcing and timeline with somebody else. So I think this technique is to force us that either that we are going to take the responsibility, or we have aligned already, right, with who is going to do whatever in the team, and then we're going to communicate out to other people. So again, the golden rule, right, is really to kind of stress that when something goes wrong with a particular action item, everybody within the group will know who to reach out to. So if that, that if we don't think that, right, that is not going to happen, it means that I don't think, it means that the owner of the action is not specific enough. So I think it's really powerful. It's really powerful. It forces us to think twice, to really do alignment before we communicate anything. Um, I think even kind of I follow this rule. Sometimes, sometimes things can get messy. Sometimes there's can communication gaps, particularly about ownership, right? So I think this can really help to avoid blame game, right, across different teams, across different departments, because when we have clear defined the owners, we communicate to other people, to different people, right? When things happens, that we can go back to the documentation, to emails, to okay, well, yeah, we align this, and just to make it easier to avoid unnecessary, we call it a retrospective, kind of a, let's say 1 month later, something happens, we know what's the problem. Right? I think we're not trying to, find, who to blame. Well, I think number one is this one is to avoid, right, the play game in the first place. I think secondly, that when something happens, right, if there's any, communication gap, in retrospect, we can go back to see what happened 1 month ago, right? To say, okay, is there anything that we can improve in the process? So that's the third one. And I think the fourth one, is, I think that you are using a specific date. So I think this one is maybe I think it's even more difficult to follow sometimes. It's difficult mentally, because it's about our confidence in something, right? I think it is okay that we understand that, right, anything can change, right? Sometimes we just cannot get something done, blah blah blah, and we're trying to be soft in our commitment. In the past, right? I think there are two levels, right? Number one is using a date, right? What is a date, right? When I say date, is a date, right? It's not like, okay, I'm going to get it done in June. I'm not going to get, in July. It's going to be, right? Give me a rest. Right now we're in May, right? If we have some project, right? Okay, you're not going to get it done in Q3, Q4. No, right? I think the question is about, okay, we're going to get it done, October 22nd, right? October 22nd, we're going to do the friends and family. November, we're going to do, the first release, and November 30th, we're going to fully launch a feature. So be that specific. I think oftentimes that when we do not have a date, it's because we don't know, because we haven't done our plan good enough. So I think over here it is a little bit tricky that, right? I think any plan is a forecast, right? We are basically a forecast how soon that we can get something done. We forecast our ability to do something. I think it is okay because basically every single time, right? I think we're asking that, right? Share a forecast or share a date, and then share, right? And share the risk, right? Okay, we're targeting, get done on June 10th, but we foresee some risk that can delay the date. The risk is A, B, C, D, E. What is the status? And also communicate that if risk A happens, the data will be delayed by one. So trying to be specific as much as you can, because when somebody is looking for a date, right, I think they're looking for some assurance, looking for something that it can leverage for their process. I think it will be super important and critical for we share a date that people can follow against for their own planning. I think that's the first level, using a date. Now, I think that many times, right, we will see people using, okay, we target to get something done when. So even though, right, the word of a target and a will, right, I think, if we don't think very carefully, I think they almost sounds like the same thing, but essentially they're not the same thing, right? I think the target is basically saying that, okay, that is we guess, we think, right, we can get there, but I think the will is basically that leaves no doubt, right? Is that, okay, we will get it done by June 10th, etc., based on the best assumption that you have. And of course, that you're allowed to list risk, etc. But that's a different topic. So in the past, that I don't really kind of think very much about, or think too much about, right, the difference between we target and we will. But gradually, that I think that we will is a much more powerful commitment than we target, because we target still a kind of, you are planning something, we're looking at different scenarios, we're going to get there by whatever date, but we will basically that we have done everything we can. That is our plan that we're going to follow. We're going to get there by whatever date. So trying to use as much when we communicate something, when we communicate a date, trying to see if we can use it, right? You say we will, and then try your best, right, not to use we target, we think we can get there. I think trying to avoid wording that can leave some people think, okay, are you really sure? Are you just guessing? Or what do you mean by you think? What do you mean by you guess? What do you mean by you target? What do you mean by I plan? No, you're just going to say, we'll do whatever on whatever date. So if we, right, I think that basically forces us to think, okay, do we feel confident in our planning? And if we, and I think many times when we don't want to say we will, because we are not confident. There's something that we don't know yet, and So if that's the case, that basically means that you do not have a plan, right? Which means that we do not have a concrete plan to communicate with your audience. And do more homework, and then make sure when we turn every single stone for a project, we have a very good handle of the project. Then we communicate. We say will work. So I think those 4 tips that I'm using every single day that really help me in communication, and I will also appreciate people will follow the same practice, so I can feel comfortable in their communication. If I ask somebody, right, asking for a date, I know that I'm getting the date, I'm getting the data, I'm getting the answer that I need. So strongly recommend those 4. I think if we look at those four tips, I think if we think them through, they all point you to the same mental model, right? I think they're pointing to the mental operating model that to basically ask ourselves, number one, do we know what we are doing? So when I say do we know what we're doing, right, it's basically the first 2. Like, do we know what's happening, right? Or do we know what we need? Do we really know what we need, right? So that's number one. And number 2, the question is, okay, do we feel confident in what we're going to do, right? That's why when we are confident, that's one that we can use I, use we, then we can use the phrase like we will, right? Not like we target, we guess. So these are my, the top 2 effective communication tips that I strongly recommend. So now the second section, right, kind of trust others. So this one, I think for me, maybe it's about more personal, but maybe it's more relevant for, right, if you manage a team, if you have dependency with other people, etc. But I think for this one, my personal experience is that before I joined Amazon, I was with JP Chase. I was doing data risk management, and I feel like particularly other banks, that majority of us, many people, Chinese, we graduate from master degree, we have some data background, we're handling data, and majority of the team for banks, the modeling team, the strategy team, they are either Chinese or, right, I think the Indian people. So and then we, right, day to day, we're working with the marketing manager, working with the operation, and working with those C whatever O. And I think we at least for me, that I developed a tendency that I think at that time I thought that I was the most or the smartest person on the team, because I know the data, and you guys, that when say you guys, not you, when I was at JP Morgan Chase, right, the people around me, those people who are not touching data day to day, in marketing operation, that I think that I know everything, that they don't know much. So I don't really trust them in terms of right, in terms of they run their own data, they do their report, because I think that they're just not smart enough. So I think this was okay. This is okay when, I think, for entry level, right? When you can basically do everything, you finish the task, you're good to go. But I think while we grow, while our job requires a much more dependency, whether you are starting managing a team, whether you are going to, right, do more kind of a coordinating, I think we need to start trust other people. So I think the number one, right? People are usually smarter than what we think or thought. Yes, I think this one, sometimes I still struggle on this one, because I think we have a tendency that we think that what is in our mind is is more important. What is in our mind is more, is more intelligent than other people. I think that's just human nature that we value our own opinion than other people. So so I still kind of remind me myself from time to time that people around me and my team, they should be smart. So um, the the second one, right? When I say be transparent and when we appear not to trust, I think it's really about self-awareness. Um, I think I'm using one example, right? When I work with the one engineer, when the engineer, I know that engineer, it was a super smart, working hard, and then he made a mistake. And right, so we talked. I point out that there was a mistake in the process. There's some customer experience impact, etc. And then right, and then it comes down to right, but we that we need to communicate, right? So the team will know, possibly that his manager will know. So in that case, right, I think in that case, we just need to be transparent that, okay, how we're going to do the communication. I still, appreciate your work, but in this case, then we're just going to follow the standard process. So when sending emails, communication, so make sure that the other party is fully aware. So just make sure that there's a transparency that and the other person knows what will happen. So in that case, right, when I think all of us, right, when we make a mistake, we I think the natural tendency is that we trying to hide it, right? When we hide it, that we don't want other people to know it, that we don't want our manager know that we make a mistake. We don't want our partner know that we make a mistake. So, but sometimes that some mistake that has to be communicated to be able to fix it, right? When that happens, then as long as right we follow the process and both parties are aware of what's happening, it should be good. And I think in that case you can still maintain the trust. So I think that's one aspect. And secondly, that right that when people make a mistake, right, you continue to trust other people to do the right thing. At the same time, right, you follow the standard process. So in that case, then we're solving the problem, we're maintaining the trust. We also follow the communication protocol of whatever of your team or your organization. So a third one, set a boundary of risk level when having dependency. So if we're depending on somebody, right, to do something, and many times we do, particularly I think today, even for individual contributor for a large company, right? I think there's so much interconnectedness, right? Of the software, of the service that we're using, right? I think it is very, very common, right? That one team is using the infrastructure, is using the service from other team, right? It's so-called, I don't know if that is a standard term, but there's a term called awaiting. Awaiting basically means that some team developing a core feature for their own product, but that feature can be scaled to other products within the organization. And then if some team would like to using your own code base, want to using the same infrastructure, they will consult your team. So we call that a way team. So even for individual, I think particularly for individual engineers, that there's a lot of dependency on other teams. So I think over here, not to mention that for manager, because basically for manager that a manager don't do much. I think the main job for manager is to set the right or to find the right talent, to set the strategy roadmap for your team and leave the execution for other people. I think over here we're mainly talking about execution risk, right? Things can go wrong, that people make a mistake. So I say set a boundary. I think it's really to make sure that right there's some control in place, that when people make a mistake, that it's not going to collapse. The whole thing is not going to turn into something that is so dramatic that, let's say, right, step one or step two, this kind of highest severity ticket. So set a boundary, right, kind of minimize your downside risk. As long as I think usually that, as long as that the worst scenario is uh, is okay that we can handle. I think that's the boundary then. Basically, to ask yourself, right, if the person that or the team that we depend on make a really really serious problem, that was the worst scenario. What we can do at that time. If we right, I think, and then if we don't feel comfortable, right, and then we should add some precautions, some measures to that. So we know that the worst scenario is something that we can still feel comfortable with. So I think that's the what I mean, the set a boundary of risk level when we have dependency. The fourth one, think twice before sharing the immediate. I think what I meant is actually means a reaction. So we, at least as a product manager, that half our time, right, are having meetings, right? We're meeting just 4, 5, 6 meetings a day, and many times, right? I think it's really to our job is to listen, get the information we need, also provide guidance to other teams about what to do next. And I think it's very easy. It's really easy to, I think, to jump the gun. When I say jump the gun, means that just to share our opinion when we hear something without thinking twice. Because I think all of us, or I think it's very easy for us to develop a certain um, pattern of thinking about problem. It's very easy that we are biased towards how we solve a problem in the past, right? That based on our prior knowledge, that we have a certain expectation, that we have a certain um, way of thinking or framing a problem. So when at the meetings, when we hear some information, when we hear some opinions, it's very easy. And I think it's mentally easy for us to follow the what we believe, what we have done in the past, and share the immediate reaction. And particularly if we sense, if we hear something that um, is not in accordance with what we think, and I think that we all have a kind of tendency to correct other people, right? To say, okay, no, you should think this way. I think you are wrong. Blah blah blah. I think in the past, I tend to do that, but I think many times I realized that I really jumped the gun. That if I think twice, if I pause for 10 seconds, I would very likely to have a different reaction, or to have a different assessment. So I think over here that if right if we hear something, particularly if we hear a differing opinion, maybe just try pause for 10 seconds, right? Before we communicate the immediate no, or a negative answer. Just pause for 10 seconds. And I think, um, I don't know the frequency, but I think sometimes you realize that if we think twice or pause, we might have a very strong reaction or assessment of other people's opinion. And so I think that's for that. And secondly, that it's really to rank, and just respect other people's opinion, because we, I think, I think it is reasonably to assume that, right, most people, when they have opinion, they did their research, right, they did their homework. So I think we can reasonably think that their opinion has some value in it, right? So even though that, even we, let's say, after we think twice, it is still not the same thing that as we think, but I think many times that we can still take some learning from other people's opinion to to continue to improve our own opinion. So think twice, or pause for 10 seconds before we jump the gun. And and then the fifth one, I'm wrong is almost, I think it's obvious, but it's hard to do as well, to admit that I'm wrong. So I think I'm wrong. I think that we can apply this thing to the first one, right? To say when we ask something, when we realize that we are wrong, right? We should just say that that the assumption that I made was not accurate. We need to adjust the assumption to A, B, C, D, E. So don't I know it's still hard, but right, let's not try our best, not try to hide our mistakes, or to make the mistake that we make very kind of sounds vague, that oh yeah, I made a mistake, but there's something that I cannot control, there's some factor that I cannot. That's fine, right? Communicate that, right? You say that, right? You can say that. You can just using fact, right? Not using emotional statement, right? Say that. You can say that, okay, I didn't the project was delayed because I didn't plan for that, but the reason is because we do not have the right tool to blah blah blah. But trying to make it reasonable. Don't try to make some excuse that sounds fancy, but when people really think about your excuse, right, then they might think, okay, that excuse is not working. So trying to feel comfortable to recognize or to acknowledge that we are not right all the time. I also find very helpful that is to kind of proactively sharing that I'm wrong, right? Particularly, I think for us, for for product manager, that we do a lot of planning, we do forecasting about the business, the growth, and then we sometimes we're making a calculation mistake, or we are missing some key point. I think it is very helpful to proactively to communicate to your team that and we need to adjust the assumption because I miss one data. So I think proactively doing that will be super helpful. To showcase that, right, we are really responsible. We don't be afraid of stating that we are wrong. That also showcase that we're open for right improvement, because you know uh, um, I think I strongly believe that, right. I think it's true that no one will always have the all the information for the right decision, right. So any decision can always be improved. So when we openly or publicly state or candidly state that we are wrong, I think it just showcases that we are open for open for suggestion. We're open for different opinion, and then people, then you kind of we open ourselves for more information, that people will trust you. They will not, right. They will not think that you will feel bad if they suggest you something. So many benefit. So that's about second section today, about how to work with other people. So I think let's see what time is it. I think time is 7:55. Going to take a 5 minutes break. We'll come back at 8. I will finish my section 3, section 4, and we can do some Q&A. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce, for sharing all these experiences. We'll come back at 8 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for staying on the line, and we can continue for today's session. So we in the first half we talk about right kind of the communication and trusting others. I think the third and fourth is really about kind of our I think more relate to our mentality towards work, right? How we think of the job, how we think of work. Um, I think those two, at least they help me to shape my perspective about work, right? It's really to see, okay, what is our priority, and then how we can, get some joy, get some happiness from work. Make it less like, okay, doing that for payment, for money, for compensation, but to make it more kind of sustainable, and then also can give us some joy. So I think the third one, the working hard. And this one, I think in general that, right? I think we Chinese, that we usually that we are working hard. I think most of us are working hard. But I'm not sure about that. Is it right? Are we? I think we do. I think right. Observe that not everyone, right? Not everyone is working hard, or I think just I think have different observation. But I think over here we're trying to convey that, trying to, right, if we want to work with others, we need to show that, right? I think we need to show our commitment, need to show that we care, particularly that to show that we care, right? That if we do not devote our energy or our efforts into something that we ask other people to do, and then we just lose the trust. It's like an investment, right? If we're going to start, investment fund, usually that, right, I think the founding parties need to invest some of their own money into the fund to have their own personal stake in the whole thing. So I think first one, right, you stick to the dates regardless. So I think previously we talked about having a date. So this one I think is obvious, right? If we will communicate something, we need to stick to it, and it is. I think there's a saying, right? It is very hard to build trust, but it is very easy to lose the trust. So, and then I think sticking to the dates is something like that, right? That we're building trust as we finish something that we commit, but we lose trust when we do not follow the dates that we communicated. So actually regarding this, right, sometimes, when there's a deadline that we need to get it done, there's a two choices. Number one is to, work for 14 hours to 16 hours and get it done. Or we can, find some excuse to say, oh, something happens, have some other reason I couldn't make it happen, blah. But I think, right, just trying to do as much as we can, and to stick to the dates. And sometimes we just can't, and that's fine. Be more proactive in communicating. Particularly, right? I think for those scenario that if we think that we cannot make the dates, right, trying to be as much as proactive as possible, not wait until 1 day before or 2 day before, but trying to be to always plan for the worst, and then kind of plan for the worst and do the best. To minimize the risk to the days. But if we have to, make some adjustment, trying to make that communication as early as possible in the process. So, and secondly, right, jumping into when the plan with dependency doesn't work. I think for this one, maybe it's more particular uh, for for me personally, right? I think that to make things happen, we're working with the operation, we're working with the marketing, we're working with the data, we're working with the legal. So there's many dependency for us to make something happen. And we rely on other people to follow the plan to make it happen. But sometimes, there's some emergency, there's some surprise. So, for example, let's say that I need some data, but people cannot, my support cannot put some data for me. Then I need to put it myself. So kind of reading that when those things happens, really that's just jump into the scenario and do whatever that we can do. I think um, that's basically you be the last person, right, to make sure that the project can stay afloat. If if I think in that scenario, either we do ourselves, that I personally do it myself, that I can do, that we can as long as it's not coding, right? I cannot code. I don't know how to do write Java. I don't know how to write HTML. But anything else that I can do, I can pull the data, I can do marketing, can do operation, etc. So whatever that I can do, I'll just jump in. Don't have any complaint. If for anything that I cannot do, right, I will find the right person to do it and escalate whatever. Try just make sure that do everything that jump in that can make the thing work. So I think this one is really it's about ownership, right? I think we can combine with the third one. Just don't say anything. Get it done, and then we talk. I think for this one, I personally struggle. I still struggle about can I find the right balance. Is I think when we do this, that we have concern that how do we sure that we are getting the right recognition for our efforts, right? I think it's very easy for us to compare that, okay, I spend, 14 hours, I spend 15 hours, and then get something done. How can I make sure that people will know that I put extra efforts in the thing to make it work? So now I think the simple question is basically how do I get a visibility for what I do, for the efforts that I put in, for the efforts that I cover for other people's job. For that, I don't really know the answer for that. I think I'm more for a doer than really need to know how to showcase or how to communicate. I think for that, I don't have a good answer. I think you might need another person to share experience about when we really working hard, we're, we're working over the weekend. How do we make sure that our efforts are rightfully recognized? I don't know. I think that's a really tricky part. I think, but I also know that question, we often ask that question with ourselves. I think we struggle. Sometimes even I struggle with that question. That is really worth it, right? Some other people mess it up. Why should I jump in and then cover other people's work? And if I do so, how do I make sure that my manager knows what I was doing? So I don't know, but I think my experience is that sometimes I think it's a balance of something. I think majority of our work will be recognized by somebody else, and then I think the long term that there will be payback. I just don't know that whether there will be payback right away, but I think long term, right, the image that we're building, the reputation that we're building will pay back someday. But I think this is a tough question about how to get a visibility. I'm not good. I personally, I'm not good at visibility, so I don't know. But I think overall that kind of just from project to kind of I think if we're talking about just to how to work together with other people, how to get things done. I think those are helpful thing for me because that I jump in, I get things done, I'm happy. In terms of how to get recognition, for promotion, that's a different topic. But in terms of just doing the execution, I recommend that we do as much as we can to get things done. So that's about working hard. I think it's obvious, but I don't think it is that obvious because I think we have I think it's kind of the third one and fourth one, they're connected with each other. It's about our mental model about how to prioritize things, prioritize our career path against other people's career path, about the team, about the company, etc. So I the fourth one, right, kind of will be less selfish. I think for this one, I I think I have been working for how many years? Working for about 7, 8 years. I think 2014, 7 years. So, of my early career, that I yeah, working hard, trying to getting promoted as fast as I can when I was at the bank. But I was usually it's very easy for me to have anxiety, right? Very easy for me to be unhappy. Very easily for me to be to feel resentful. In terms of I think the core is that I think we tend to compare ourselves to other people. Compare. I think what we're trying to. I think we're using a formula. That I'm using a formula, kind of an equation, right? To the compensation, divided by the efforts that we're putting, and we're trying to just maximize that ratio, right? Compensation divided by divide efforts. In a way, I think what makes it worse that we're trying to compare that ratio to people that we think um, are not working hard or are not smart enough. So we can always find some example that we think that we're not rightfully compensated, that we're not getting promoted as fast as we can. So always compare to other people. So I think it made my life very miserable when I was trying to to advance in career, trying to make things work, trying to getting promoted, etc. So I think taking the mentality of being less or being less self-centered, helped me to have a more healthy relationship with my job, with my team. So I think over here, also of course compare less as well. Um, so be less selfish, right? I think number one, right, thinking other people's shoes. Um, this one, I think it is hard to do, right? We are it's very easy for us to get busy. When we get busy in the daily operation, I think we should, many times we're trying to trying to not surviving mode, but trying to get our task done, to get our job done. So in that mentality, we think about ourselves. But I think what I'm trying to convey here that when we receive a request, when we somebody are seeking our help, the mental model that I'm using right now is to why not help right away. I think the is that if we can if we can make somebody at a company making their job easier, making their life easier, for one day, right? That I think we can all we I think we all know, right, the experience that when we are when we are seeking help, we are requesting help, if the other person, provide the help right away, I think we all, right, that it will make our day great. We feel happy, we feel the collaboration, we feel that um, we are taken care of, we feel that we are valued, right? People are do care about us because they help us. So when I using that model, I sometimes I even prioritize other people's requests over my own task, because because I think if I can help them, make them happy, and for myself, if there's a delay, that's fine. I mean, I can put in extra hours, right? Stay late, get things done. That's fine. But if we, I think that so I think that's the mental model I'm using. I don't know if that's the right operating model for everyone. But I think that works for me. That I think that kind of gave me a sense of purpose as well at work, right? The purpose of helping others, at within the company. And particularly, I think the other way to look at it is I think it is associated with the second one, right? Kind of about prioritization. So um, from the team or from the company perspective, I think I'm also think of when I was at college, I was my secondary major is international trade, right? I think there's a theory about international trade is about we gain efficiency by doing whatever that we do best, right? So basically that because our time is limited and we should do things that we are most efficient and we trade. So the whole world that is operating at maximum productivity. I think we can apply, right? Okay, apply the same model, right, at work. That right, somebody is better at something, somebody is better at something else. I think in this particular case, right, when somebody asking for help, was asking for our help, it is because for a particular domain that we, right, because we either because we have worked in that area or because we have we have some more experience, so we can better tackle that problem, right? For compared to other people. So which means, right? Some people will struggle for 1 hour or 2 hours for something. But for us, maybe we just spend 2 minutes or 5 minutes to give the answer that they need or provide guidance. So they're not going to waste other with additional times, right? So I think I think, right, if we just compare that, right, if we just think about the total time, right, between you and the other person, right, for the same task, right, if you help, your total time is spent is about 5 minutes. If we do not, right, it's about 1 hour. So I think in aggregate, that we are making the team or the company more efficient. So I think that's also speaking to, right, the polarization model that we're talking about. So right, if we jump to the second, right, I think it's really about in the past, right, it's really, when I have the self-centered mentality, right, all I thinking is about, okay, how should I make the case for myself, how can I make sure that my project has the highest visibility, how I make sure that I'm always, sound the most smart or the smartest person in the room. So um, that's good. I think that works for many people, but it doesn't work for me because I think for that it is kind of always like a race or struggle that I it at least it's hard for me to be happy. So the new model that I'm using, right, when I say polarization, so I think always now I'm keeping in mind about my team, about, my department, the company, right? What's the right decision for the team? What's the right decision for the company? So I think in many different scenarios or cases that, right, I think the decision, if we think about from the overall team perspective, think about from the company perspective, our decision might be very different if we just focus on ourselves. So, for example, the team, right? I think right now at my team, I'm almost the most 10-year member of my team, and I have some of my peer product managers. I do spend. I am very happy to spend a lot of time, either train them or either provide have a weekly one-on-one to them to help them grow as soon as possible. So even though I don't think that I gain anything straight from the relationship or from the mentoring, etc. But I know that if I do that right, I'm making the my team better. My team will grow faster, and kind of indirectly, it will benefit me some way down the road. I don't know when, but I think I know that I'm making the right decision for the team, and also for the company. When I say for the company, I think it's very interesting that that when I think we can think of right each business as a for a product manager that with our department, right, you can think of as a small business within Amazon, and then there's many different small businesses. Sometimes there might be some even competition, etc. So when we're making and constantly that we're making decision about priority, about resourcing, right? Particularly, right, when we're going to allocate engineering resourcing to project A or B and C, I think it's very easy for us to just focus on your own team, right? Okay, we need to advance we need to grow our program. We need to just focus on our feature, etc. But many times I think that the decision that I want to focus on one team might not be the right decision for the company, right? Because if we take a higher view about resourcing, right? I think it's likely that if we spend some resourcing, right, on other teams or other departments, that will create a higher value for the company overall. So sometimes, I would suggest, right, within my team that I suggest, we should, spend resourcing not on our team but on other teams as well, if it makes sense for the company. So that has to be my prioritization model. It can sound crazy. I think it's a little bit crazy. That right, we are kind of basically, oh no, we shouldn't do that because the decision we should focus on the company overall, even though in the short term that we are it might hurt the team, but I know that I'm making the right decision. So I think when I do this, um, directly I might not benefiting myself, directly I'm not benefiting the team, but I think gradually, right, when we do that, I think we those kind of a mentality is showcase that I think, right. I mean, we are using now I have to turn into the leadership principle for Amazon. I know many people will hate that principle, but I love them. So right, there's a think big leadership principle that we are promoting with Amazon. I think that basically shows that we're thinking big, right? And also we have a lot of principle about developing the talent across the team. So trying to be less selfish or think about the team, think about the member around you, trying to make the team a better place for them. Trying to see how we can make people around us happier at work. I think it is rewarding. I think we, right, all of us get a sense of accomplishment or joy when we do some community service, right? We go to orphanage. We sometimes we help homeless people, but I think we get a sense of happiness. I think we can apply the same mentality at the workplace, even though it is doesn't sound like that, right? Our colleague need our help, because even on the surface that we're competing, right, for the promotion, for the title, but maybe just try, right, to try to be, more thinking in other people's shoes to see what you are going to gain from that mentality. I think gradually, I'm strongly believe that, right. I think those payback might be not short term, might be long term, but I think the payback will be even faster than the short term self-centered mentality. So and then, right, I think we take that mentality, it's very easy for us to gain trust. It will very easy for us to get support when we need them. It will be um, I think just a very amazing model for myself. So give it a shot, right? I think just try in the future when you are making a decision. Maybe think of perspective that, okay, is the decision can benefit other people? Is the best decision for the team? The decision for the best team for the company? I think if we're using that, there might be a different mentality. And I hope that using the less selfish model can make us compare less, right? Maybe I think doing less comparison is really important for us to be less frustrating, um, be less um, be less, resentful, right? In towards those material thing related, right? About compensation, promotion. I think those things they will come, um, and then I think this is a more sustainable model, right? That we can get some joy from work and get some purpose, get some joy from work at the same time, right? We're going to get a promotion. I don't doubt that no, I do not doubt that using this model actually then I think it's actually speed up my process of getting a higher rating, getting a high compensation, or getting promoted faster. I think it is working for me. I can see the progress, and then it also, I think sometimes when I taking those um, less selfish perspective, it also helped me kind of make me bolder or more brave to share my opinion, because I think sometimes we feel shy, we feel even feel shameful sometimes, right? In when we are promoting, when we're sharing our opinion, because we're afraid that maybe people will think that we're selfish. We are trying to just promoting our own ideas. That's why we feel afraid, right? Same apply to that, because we're afraid that if we're talking to our manager about promotion, they might think we are selfish. But I think if we take the less selfish model, right, kind of have that mentality on the day to day, I think that will make us more comfortable. That because we know, right? We know that genuinely that we are not just thinking about ourselves. I think that will make those kind of conversation more natural, more comfortable for us. So I strongly recommend just take this approach and see if it works for you. I think it will have a very strong long-term benefit. That's for the fourth one, be less selfish. Lastly, right, some tips for working with the PMs. So I think those five things, right, is something that I will appreciate people that around me that I collaborate with, that I will appreciate if or they also make my job easier, make my work more effective, and make my work enjoyable, right? So number one is to be specific in the communication, right? Um, talks about the first one, all those kind of be specific about the action owner, the date. Don't give me, don't share, don't talk about something that very vague and that doesn't provide any guidance or direction, right? Be specific and be straightforward. Number two, proactively highlights risk. So I think this important for me is that, right, when there's any risk, I want to know as soon as possible so I can plan ahead. I think this apply to actually everybody else, right? particularly when we have a dependency, we will appreciate that we know the risk beforehand. And third one is, right, don't be afraid to ask for help. Um, is that right? If if people will need some escalation, need help, I will be very happy, right, to help, to escalate to leadership so we can unblock things that we anticipate that will happen in the process. I think that actually will make me feel comfortable that we know that, okay, right? It means that the team is proactively identify risk and proactively um, remove those barriers. So make me more comfortable about the project process. But I think sometimes we feel shy that we don't want to ask for help. We're afraid that we don't want to appear stupid, etc. But no, please don't. Because as I said, that nobody knows everything. And the fourth one, working hard. You know, uh, if we have a date, just make it happen. Um, I think people just care about result. Same for me, right? Result is most important thing. And if we need to make adjustment, that's fine. As long as we have the data to support that, as long as the ask is reasonable. So I think those are four. And then the fifth one, I just want to, right? I think many of you that might be engineers, you might be data scientists, you might be program manager, you might be marketing manager. Maybe let me know if you have some struggle working with the PMs. I'm happy to talk them through to see if I can share some help or some tips that can make your relationship with your PM smoother. I know that right, there's a joke that between engineers and PM we are like enemies. We don't like each other. We think each other different way. Engineers think that PM do not provide support. They don't know anything. PM think engineers are not working hard enough. I think there's some misconstrued perception about relationship. But if you feel that there's some room for improvement in terms of your working relationship with your PMs, let me know. We can connect offline. You can ask a question over here. I'm happy to provide some my thought from the PM perspective. So with that, I think we're concluding today's sharing.
Thank you, Bruce, for sharing everything here. Let's jump into the Q&A session. If there's any things you wanna talk to our speaker and ask yourself, please, you can unmute yourself and ask now. Anyone volunteers? Okay, I have seen a question in a chat window. I can ask you for now. Are there any tips in setting realistic timeline?
Yeah, I think for me that I always start with right. If let's say if there's a 5 different dependency, I will looking for which dependency has the highest risk, what will take the longest time, and I will just focus on that one. And then in the stress test, right, kind of talking to the owner of that work stream to my style is always to stress test to see, right, what is the optimal scenario. I prefer the optimal scenario is that optimally realistic scenario, so we can that can motivate people to do the best that they can, but at the same time make it realistic. So I usually using that timeline for communication. But I think if there's any concern from the members, when it's, oh no, that is too much, we can make the adjustment. But to also make sure that that adjustment, that timeline is not too far off or that too conservative, to lose the motivation factor. Because I do think that that when we have a date, when we have a aggressive date, we can be more creative, not working harder. I think working harder and working with the focus are two different things. I think when we have a reasonably motivational timeline, people will have a stronger focus to get things done. So that's my perspective. So I think about realistic is really about, I think it is really about the consensus between you and then your team member to see what is reasonable. And then once you have that, but also keep in mind that, right, to make sure that that's not too conservative. Otherwise, but I do not have concern about being too conservative. I think naturally that at least within the company, I think people will usually that setting aggressive timeline for themselves, because I think that's a natural tendency to show off that, okay, I can get things done. So I don't really have concern that the timeline is too loose. But in terms of the concern that if are we setting to, if the question is really about is it too aggressive, um, I don't know. I think it's really um, about the comfort that your dependent team has, and then working, and maybe, and usually I will try to stress test to see can we be earlier, as long as the other team feel comfortable, then we're using that.
Yeah, I do have a follow-up question here. So isn't it being kind of dangerous when you're setting up the timelines too aggressively? Because if you
Mhm.
just miss them, it will cause like losing the confidence from your superiors. So isn't it a better to like setting a more reasonable and more conservative timeline if you can? Why
Yeah, I
you
think.
think like
Mm,
you
yeah.
can have the confidence to set a really like optimal timeline, and why you think that is a good strategy?
Yeah, I think that's the way, that's that when I think when I say optimally reasonable, I think that it basically means that if we're assuming everything works fine,
Mhm.
we'll get there, assuming the BAU working rate. Some people don't feel comfortable with that. Some people prefer to add a buffer. They say, okay, right, if we assume everything is fine, we can get it done within 1 month. But usually something happens, so we're going to apply 1 2 week buffer. That's fine. And then if the other party strongly recommend a buffer, then we add a buffer. I think the scenario that I don't want to get into is to set the bar low at the beginning, and then and lose opportunity for something else. So I think it is important for me to know what is the goal. When everything works fine, and then we can adjust based on that. I think that also give us benchmark to understand the pace of the project. Are we doing good, or we're doing bad? Because I think when we're setting the low bar, it will have some cascading effect in terms of tracking, performance rating, etc.
Mhm. Cool. Thank you for answering the question. Anyone in the participants who would like to ask Bruce any question?
Yeah, I think.
Hi. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Bruce,
Hi,
I have a
this is
quick
Wayne.
question. So being a product manager, you naturally have to collaborate and work with so many different teams, like engineering, design, I guess. I mean, I'm not in a tech company, but just in general, you have to work with so many different teams. But you are not really, none of them report directly to you.
Yeah.
So it's tricky to find alignment and making sure that you hold them accountable to to deadlines or to what is agreed on, right? So how do you actually handle those relationships and making sure that um, they can deliver? Because I see that you mentioned that, let's say some parties didn't really hold their part, and you would jump in and trying to do things right with this can do attitude. But this I guess this can work maybe in the short term, but in the long run, it's better to have the expert to actually do their parts. So what are some of your tips and experience in making sure that, you can foster the alignment and the collaboration between the teams?
Yeah, I'm not sure when you say expert, maybe we can clarify later, but so let's assume that everybody in their position knows what to do, right? I think if that's not the case, it's a different conversation. Then so if assuming that everybody knows what to do. So that's right. So we do not have the direct hierarchical relationship with them. So we don't dictate their deadline. So my approach is always that number one, that I showcase that I am supportive of their project, of their progress. So when I say supportive, that I'm trying to collaborate and make their job successful by providing whatever support I can provide through the day-to-day. And secondly, about alignment, I think alignment is it is difficult, but I think it is not that difficult. I think that speaks to the right to stating or asking for specifics. So whenever we start anything, a project or target, we're going to talk about the goal, right? Okay, what is a reasonable? I think two things, right? Number one, who is the owner, right? So to identify the right owner, there must be an owner for anything at a team. So if the owner is about we need some data support, we need some data engineering, there will be a team for that. If there's a lack of guideline at the organizational level about what needs to be done by what teams, it's a different conversation. I think then in that case, we can get some alignment on the leadership level, talk to your manager, talk to your manager, okay, they will find out who will be the owner. I think that's not the problem. So okay, we find out the owner, and then we're going to assess for any task what is the efforts. I think that's basically the sizing efforts, right? Just ask a question. Okay, you are the owner. Okay, when we can get it done, right? Just asking for a date. As long as we have the date, we have the action items. We set up the responsibility and make sure. Not make sure. I think usually that whether you trust other people, we do not trust other people. I think it's always a good practice to communicate the date through writing, either email or some other forms of writing or tool direct into the system. So the owner knows what's going on, and naturally that the owner's manager will know what's going on. And then once we have that alignment, the ownership, and then the date is based on reasonable assessment of the person's ability, and then the task, right? As long as that the owner commit to that date, align with that date, and then I think most people will follow that date to work hard to make that happen. So I think that's I think the I don't think it's about pressure or something. It's really about it's about that everybody has a role. Everybody has a role to support some other people to. Oh, I think it's about that everybody has a role in a certain project, right? I think that's part of their job description. That if they want to be successful, they need to follow that job guideline to based on their ability to get things done and to follow if they're the owner, if they're the I think that's what drive people to get things done. It's not because they want to support the PM. I don't think that's the case, right? Nobody knows each other. I think because that particular piece of project is their job responsibility, and then we have aligned that that is their job to get that done by when, and that will be how they will be measured against their performance, and that I think that's how it works. So I really don't think that I think it's really driven by the job description, their responsibility, and their if there's someone's work, if that's their job and that the community do it, I think people usually would do it. If they don't do it, and then that's a different conversation. But I think that in terms of, I don't think it's really about kind of PM forcing something to do. No, I think it's about alignment, that we're finding the right owner to do the thing that people are hired to do.
Thank you.
Thank
Hi,
you for asking. Yeah.
I
Wendy,
have a
please go
question.
ahead.
Hi, this is Wendy. Thank you, Bruce, for giving us such a kind of great presentation today. It's very inspiring, and I learned a lot from you. And I hope that we can connect it offline, because I have some other questions I want to kind of learn from about your perspective or opinions. Here, I just want to throw out my question is that I'm leading a data science team, and this is just to kind of recall my memory when I worked as an individual contributor, when I interact with the project manager or product manager. It is often that we have a hard time to get aligned with the timeline, because for the data science problem, there are so many kind of, we hope we can provide some certainty. However, there are a lot of go back and forth. So like I remember I do feel the pressure that when the project manager asks me, hey, can you get this done just in 2 weeks? Like say we follow the typical agile process. And I will always kind of hesitate to say that yes, give the yes answer. So like just given this type of the scenario, do you have any suggestions? Because right now I'm not doing kind of the very hands-on work, but I just hope to give some suggestions or guidance for my team that when they interact with the project manager, maybe we can have a more efficient way of get aligned with the timeline. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have that. I think we have a lot of, there's a lot of interaction between PMs and data scientists or BIE, right, in terms of data request. I think for my my perspective would be that obviously that we prefer a concrete answer. And I think it's not, and many times I would say that, right, particularly for data related requirements, it's not going to be that if we're not getting it, let's say, within 2 weeks, within 3 weeks, within 4 weeks, the world is going to collapse. That the project will be doomed. No, I think many times, at least my experience, that when people would like to get data within 2 weeks, it's just it can be just a random request or random timeline they're setting. But I think there must some urgency that they want to get some data for something. But I don't think it's going to be a do or die scenario for any kind of a request. So, but in terms of how to communicate, I think even though there's some uncertainty, as I that I will appreciate, right? I still want a date, even though there's uncertainty. And I think that some company they have as a practice of a data for date, right? Data for date, with the data when we can provide a date.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do not have a date, we appreciate a data DFD with a data for date, and then which means that we're going to take some research to figure out the exact requirements and then provide data. I think the key is really to provide some certainty to the product manager. And then also, if when there's some uncertainty, provide kind of a heads up that we are facing those kind of risks. I think in terms of a data science request, I think the two major risks. Number one is that the model might not work. Right, we try some one model, but we don't get the significance of this model. We have to try different model.
Yeah, even sometimes like when we collect the data, we find that wow, the data is just so hard. It's not very structured. They have a lot of missing data. It's just a kind of more challenges for the modeling work.
Yeah, and then the second challenge is going to be that some data pipeline, there's an issue, right? We're trying to pull the data, but then there's a stock that the data doesn't exist. So we need to request additional data because of archive that all the things. I think in that case, that I think a good to maybe take 1 or 2 days to really to kind of size. I think the sizing practice is done a lot by engineers because they have the size different component coding requirements. I think we can do the same thing for data science. Just when the sizing I'm talking about, just to make sure that there's no block in the process, right? Do a high level blocking analysis, risk analysis about make sure that we have the data, make sure that we have some confidence that this model will work, right? Do as much as we can, and then for anything that we're not sure about, let's say the model technique that we can say, okay, because we're not sure that we haven't done this model before, we're not sure if it will work, we might need to try 2 or 3 times. So we can say that we can provide the first result, in 2 weeks. I'm not sure if it will work. If it doesn't work, we'll try another one, another 2 weeks. So we're talking about, so can you provide different scenario for different scenario with very specific reasoning behind it. I think what the PMs we are concerned is about that. What I think we do not like is uncertainty or some uncertainty driven by not knowing anything or not knowing the risk, right? If we are told that this might get delayed, we want to know why it might get delayed. So I think that I think certainty is more important than sometimes it's more important than getting it done earlier, because I think certainty will make the PM plan better. So I think if we think of from the PM perspective, when we need something, I think everything kind of connected together, right? It's possibly that the PM would like to get the data, get a model, so they can take the model to talk to different teams for something else. I think the planning is the most important thing for PM. So certainty is the key. So I think from that perspective, as long as you provide certainty and then provide some heads up that this might get delayed, so that the other party PM can plan ahead. That's okay. It's possible that the model will not be ready with the model. If that happens, I have my plan B, plan C. So it's always, I think always PM will have different plans. I think have several different plans depending
Backup
on
plans,
I think that just help. I think maybe just think about how we can help PM plan their project and ask them, okay, if it doesn't work, is there anything else that I can help you plan better for your project?
Okay.
So I think certainty is a key for PMs.
Okay, thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, thank you for asking this question. I saw a question in the chat box, but if there's anyone having other questions, feel free to unmute yourself. So Caroline is asking how to communicate with your manager better when you are more challenges than expected and you need extra help without making him thinking you are incapable. Really good question.
Yeah, I think it's about, I think number one is about self-assessment. Do we think that by asking this, we are incapable? That I think we need to have some sense of that our ability ourselves to develop that confidence that if this is reasonable or not reasonable. I think based on that is I think it really depends on the challenge itself. If the challenge is kind of a surprise or increase the scope of that we are not. I think you mentioned very well that than expected. So I think the key is that when we communicate, right, the date or the plan to our manager, right, do we communicate that that's based on the expected scenario, right? And then if we have that alignment in the beginning, right, when those unexpected happens, right, basically we can say that, right, we do not anticipate this is a risk, that's why they get delayed. I think that's supernatural. I think I do think that more than half of the days at a company, they're getting delayed. It's very rare for any project to get a project to get delivered on time. I think that's very, from my experience, that almost never happened. Always delayed for some reason. That's fine. That's totally fine. I think we tend to establish the aggressive timeline, right? Even from the, I think that's kind of, I think that's something that we intentionally to do from the top down, right? To have aggressive timeline, so people can work harder or be working smarter to unblock things. So I think as long as when in this case, assuming the scenario that, right, because this unexpected challenge, I think the job for us is to do when we communicate the original plan, we communicate that it's based on expected scenario. There's some risk if there's something unexpected happens. I think as long as we can explain what happens reasonably, that we're not aligned with something, I think usually manager will appreciate this kind of escalation, because we're helping your manager, tackle or unblock the risk that you have discovered. So I think actually, I'm thinking in this case that when you identify such a risk or challenge because unexpected thing, the path that I will recommend is that if the challenge is not that crazy, take a step by yourself, right? If you can get it done, if you get it done, right, what you can do is, I'm talking about some politics here. I'm sorry. Is that you can write. If you can solve it, that's great. And then you can also communicate, right? Send an email or that we encounter this one. I want to share some learning that I have, right? Because I think okay, this might be valuable for other teams. No, I think that with the simple purpose that you get things done, you increase your visibility, you share learning, and that's perfect for you. Imagine will be super happy. Secondly, right, if you try that, if it doesn't work, great, right? What are you going to do? That you communicate, say, okay, a manager, we have something happening. This is a situation. I took an initial step. It doesn't work, but this is my insight into the problem. I need your help to escalate. If we do not get this done, it will delay by 1 week. So we need to get this done as soon as possible, and we need to help based on my initial deep dive, because I know the background already. So that's great. So I think, right, in that case, right, you showcase your ownership, you're willing to do extra, you communicate, you unblock the project. So I do think, right, in this case, that it's more of an opportunity for you to showcase your ownership, your ability, instead of showing that we are incapable.
Thank you. I think many of the people in Korea may have similar questions. Thank you, Caroline, for asking. And in case, well, we are close to the end, I will thank you for joining our event today, and thank you everyone's patience of staying online with our session. And I would like to remind everybody that if you have any feedback or advice for the Korea Club, please follow the link in our WeChat group. We do have Google Docs to collect people's feedbacks, and your feedback may help us learn. Thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone is having a good night. We will see you in the next PM session.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.